Hello, this is about how to counter data evidence reception, racketeering worse than war crimes, identity reception worse than war crimes, which is since founding, the upper 10 people are making conspiracy theories when they speak about it. Meanwhile, they're making treatments of black and white, and all exceptions that left out how that was employed by a breaching method, not for on the records employments, employed using the dictionary definition of employment. See, they keep changing more and more dictionary definitions to applications definitions, like arrays. They keep making real life fit more and more with arrays with people who, since they were kids, were involved with that method that was using databases with the slavery against everyone, sickly, distinctly, witch trials, crazier laws than that against every single person because they have complete remote possession, just like they had complete remote possession of everyone's premises treatments, time treatments, reactions at locations that were then recalled at former locations themselves, sickly, distinctly enslaved from the regular locations, regardless how much money they had or whatever like that. And so, no, in other words, honesty knows the difference between wealth that is criminally legalized, criminally foreign influenced, and having been self-valuing that because everyone was ignoring uses of it, which is uses of them self-valuing that. Because then you can't speak for the identity of the law, but you're going to speak anyway. So this is why, how they employed guises for breaching screens while they had the breaching tool weapon. Worse, you know, torture and stuff like that with the slavery. There's a method there. You don't separate the method from the science of what is slavery to the human fact tribute nature. See, now the people that were supposed to do this, they didn't do this. So they valued what the breaching method already had set up for them because they're still making positive and negative treatments anyway. No, so increasingly valuing logic where we're supposed to, each grade, even when you're not, even when that is not the subject. See, the subjects, how they have an identity that is shared, that is increasingly relevant. People make convictions too about the value of the sciences individually grouped them together. They leave out exceptions, exception to nature. Because in other words, when we look at what is negative and positive simultaneously, we discern, and honestly, we discern the breaching methods, involvements. Therefore, it's inseparable ties to the proper answers and to the proper value treatments of questions, as the value of questions. See, questions that, so we have a timing, we have the locations where data is received, where evidences are received, which is everywhere. We have them originally still in collusion as victims, but in collusion that where victims made made and make value treatments through these systems other than the actual one, and with the value of sequence shift, of sequence forbid usages. So rather than allow me and others to speak about predicate acts, you have the same sick natures as victims, but as victim predators, interbranch with the overt criminal enterprises inclusion at locations, with private ones juxtaposed, and with uses of that insidious nature, where opinions A through Z blamed on other things, others and or themselves. The real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. while making positive treatments in collusion with that criminal insidiousness of the breaching method that was criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments and of identity treatments in collusion. So, no, against Native Americans, sickly distinctly to keep from Native Americans and from colonists and to keep from Americans, and now hyper Native Americans and as Americans too, because now there's an additional value to discern how we are not the value nature system that is nature's, where nature is native pure. So we have these sides that were forged. And then inside those sides, because that's an identity of relationship to itself, that logic, entertained, only realized, that which was designed to replace the native education, whether you're Native American or not. In other words, the same education that was stolen from us, perfect education, that is increasingly perfect, the only one that is, which is the identity of the hyper simultaneous, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that here at Earth, distinctly from the rest of space nature. Now a system sickly, having forsaken our difference, and that increasingly our one little species is the cause of Earth's value through us. Earth has no criminal foreign influences, but we are one body. So in other words, lethal hadith is being force-based nature transfer. This is per science, most probably, and what the ancients were speaking about, because science reveals it is true. But a quality of science by a quality of fact, you need to evaluate the value of the sciences they share, and of evidences with more integrity, and they values the importance of sequence true first, because they want and need to pretend that they want to have debates about integrity out of sequence. Increasingly, they're having to value being and having been roles at all locations with evidence planting, the interbranch in their kids and the private tie to them. This is our own. The overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and just that insidiousness, countries A through Z, with the positive and negative treatments. For example, relevant to the relativity of the suit and tie, how they have that theme, and then they speak. They have weapons relatives, for example, simultaneously to the relatives that simultaneously relative to the weapons they have pointed at each other. We have pointed at each other. Our fake sides representing us as fake representation of the human volume science. Then they smile. Then they get mad. And when they're speaking, they interbranch distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. They're already recorded methods having been used remotely, individually grouped and together against our own. They're in collusion with uses of cases, everything that comes before the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the political branch, and it uses people's neighbors through time, intercities connected, and then they connect that per their needs to keep sophistication, a pseudo sophistication or not, and inclusion. There were arrays of opinions, inclusion with the illusions that sequence shifts. at where and how the quality of fact, treatment, nature at all locations originally still prevented someone, no matter what they were, no matter what physical culture they were. Many countries that they call, see, they have white, black, oh, and you have little kids that grow up, eh, you know, fighting culture wars, or just culture. They're speaking for culture. They don't. They're leaving out the rest of culture. They're speaking about the physical culture and a little bit more than that. They leave out what physical culture and way more than that, and way more finite than that at the same time is because they never had. These are all now interbranched too. There's a stupid logic. Then they need to pretend. See, they want us to call them names because they can't fight about sequence. They need to pretend that we're calling them names. So that's why they're not responding to us. In other words, the algorithms are involved with them planting evidences at locations. They've also been planting evidences online. See, when the people say there are absolutely no evidences of elections fraud, and they're saying the people need to have faith in democracy. They have physical delusions juxtaposed with criminally foreign influence needs to say that. And they are because they have been preventing mandated law. Because, for example, Weathersfield town law offices, there's a whole bunch of people involved with wire crimes I caught the Weathersfield police with. They want to have debates about things and cases. They want us to sue with them or whatever. But they're switching names, forging names. They want to separate the issues. Can't do that and get the right outcome. Can't do it when we have lawyers originally still fabricating audio and video. All these they're creating fake arrays, and they have like physical delusions commonly said, like, it's usually somewhere in the middle. So when you hear people speaking about isms, they need to pretend things that aren't written as the Constitution because they can't defend themselves and us at the same time. And the people that wrote things in the Constitution about, that made convictions in personal life, like Benjamin Franklin or whatever like that, they leave out how those criminal and seditious natures and positive and negative treatments left out, and leave out how our founding parents, like George Washington, wanted us explained how they wanted to be the Constitution unabridged. They wanted nothing to do with the natures of wealth they were forced to entertain everyone already, without. So having to start, where they were with and without it, they had to keep everyone extorted. They had to counter extorted because all locations, areas, and states enter colonies themselves individually grouped and extorted. In other words, they weren't just Connecticut wasn't just a possession of the breaching method by England's roles. It was not just the other countries involved, individually grouped. There was an archetypal breaching method there. Excuse me, I have to, so no one's watching, but if you get one person, that's all we need. In other words, follow mandated law. They've been fabricating audio and video, the interbranch and the military, all exceptions tied to them, with the online platforms. Now they've been needing to want to be blamed on themselves by themselves, but since they were kids, they've been criminally foreign influence roles with use of people's names behind their back to make it look like they were next to them ever. People in the same age range, because they keep the interbranch criminally foreign influence and then in collusion with illusions and such like that.